Okay, folks, let's get ready to talk some basketball because my goodness, that was fun. So, without further ado, let's talk some hoops. Whew, what a night. Iowa survives Illinois, LSU rolls Tennessee, and Michaela Blakes is doing something we have not seen since a player named Caitlin Clark. It's No Cap Space after dark. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's No Cap Space, No Cap After Dark. Andrew Hobner carrying on the proud spirit of my beloved Pac-12 because what is dead may never die. It's After Dark, and we are coming to you live here in the hotel room in Smyrna, the infamous hotel room in Smyrna, Tennessee, where I have been for 4 weeks for job training with my lovely day job company. And one of the great things I have is the opportunity to talk some women's basketball. So this was a great one. Before we get started, as always, folks, subscribe to the free daily newsletter if you haven't. Use code NOCAP15 to get 15% off your first purchase. Check the link in the description. Become a YouTube member or a Beehive member. Join the Discord chat because it was buzzing, positively buzzing this evening. Iowa wins. Ole Miss loses. Texas is currently wiping Georgia off the face of the earth in a way we have not seen since William Tecumseh Sherman. UConn wins. South Carolina wins. Michaela Blakes is on a Caitlin Clark run. We'll get more into that in a minute. LSU defeats Tennessee, but the Lady Vol is showing a little bit more fight. And I guess I gotta say, the old Iowa song, right? In heaven, there is no beer. That's why we drink it here. And when we are gone from here, our friends will be drinking all our beer. Mill Creek Brewing. Shout out to Tennessee. Okay, so let's get started, y'all. What a game. That was just an absolute masterclass on a Thursday in the Big Ten. Illinois does nearly the impossible there. 8 of 8 from 3. I guess 8 of 9. We're jumping on this probably a little early, so I'm guessing they had one more heave at the end there. But seconds left at the end of the second quarter until about 4 seconds left at the end of the fourth. 9 of 9 from three-point land. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the commentary crew, I don't know who it was on the play-by-play tonight, but boy, they did an amazing job really just showing and conveying how utterly preposterous that was. The only thing that felt more preposterous was Ava Hayden and Hayden's ability to roll up and seemingly beat a team that was shooting that much from 3 from 2. I mean, how often do you see this? Let me actually open this up because this is legitimately crazy. And as always, if you want to put your comment up, join the Ball Knowers, and we will throw your comments on the screen. We love super chats, all that fun stuff. 82-78, your final score. Iowa wins in the fourth, 26-22. Sierra Parchment and Barry Wallace, just unbelievable games from these two. But when's the legitimately, folks, when's the last time you have seen something like this? When is the last time you've seen a team not only outshoot Iowa from 3 in terms of percentage? I mean, that's something we've seen before, right? But when's the last time you've seen a team out 3-point attempt Iowa like this? 19 threes attempted for Illinois, 7 threes attempted for Iowa. Really quiet night for Chit Chat, right? 0 for 4, 0 for 1 from 3. The limited shots that she had were really coming up short all night. And beyond that, man, Ava Hayden and Hannah Stolke combined for 20 of 31 shooting. Hayden 13 of 18. And like they even took her off the floor for kind of weird stretches of time here, including one of the last possessions in the fourth. And man, I mean, she was just a difference maker all night long. And that's really what she's been with this Iowa team the entirety of the season. I really think Jan Jensen deserves a ton of credit for how she's been able not only to develop this team and develop Ava Hayden, but also how she's been able to maintain the success of a team like Iowa that we have gotten very used to being perimeter centric. right? I mean, even when you had the pre-Caitlin Bluter teams, like they still shot the ball from deep. And, I just came away and I've come away from every Iowa game so impressed by how Jan's kind of taken, double big with Stuelke and Hayden and really found a way to make it work like this. It's a departure from what Iowa's been able to do, but it's indicative of a coach that understands what the landscape is, because as good as your backcourt can be, look at who is building their teams, how they're winning, and what they are doing with it, right? Dawn Staley, famous at this point for double big at South Carolina. That's what's won titles. It was a little bit different last year with UConn. I think, it's a kind of different scenario when you have arguably the best guard in the game at that point, a legitimately generational forward at that point, and then AZ Fudd, who were like, oh yeah, she's the third. You know what I mean? Like it just that was, I think, a unique situation. But a lot of these teams that have won, they've done so with double big. Even LSU in 2023, it wasn't just Angel Reese in that title game; it was LaDeja Williams too, right? So I think what Jan Jensen is seeing is taking stock of the landscape and looking at what is happening outside of her own individual program and her individual ethos. And you're looking at a coach that is taking what succeeded and evolving. And that, to me, is something that if you are an Iowa fan, you take that and have it in your back pocket and know this is your coach. And coaches, in a lot of ways, we can say that they have been, how do I put this? Like, coaches have been carried by elite bigs in the past, right? I mean, that's just kind of the game. Like, a coach can't make a team great as a title contender, especially in basketball, when someone in year 5 or in year 10 affects the floor on both ends that much. But you need the combo. You need a great player and you need a great coach. It's very rare you see like a great coach, some of the parts a title, or vice versa, where it's just a player that brings the plumbers to the title, right? I mean, the last time that actually happened was everybody's favorite, Cheryl Swoops, back in '93. That's why people will ride and die with Swoops, regardless of, what their opinions are of her now as a post-pro, right? So I think you're looking at Jan Jensen, notice what's happening here. And I find myself extraordinarily impressed with her. Extraordinarily impressed with Illinois too, mind you. Some folks in the chat have mentioned Illinois typically a 36% team from three-point land. Tonight they were 58%. Sierra Parchment, Barry Wallace, Aaliyah Guyton, the former Iowa Hawkeye, transferred 4 of 6 of her own. Really, it just kind of came down to that one individual play right at the end. I'm sure Gina Wariema is probably somewhere doing like the, like point at the TV or have the cigarette in the hand like Leonardo DiCaprio and Tarantino, right? Or you got, the Oscar the Grouch PTSD. It's kind of one of the two. There's enough memes of Gino like looking kind of flustered, like the old YouTube video of the gopher kind of doing the like that. I'm sure he did that wherever he was, drinking his vino after UConn absolutely obliterated another hapless Big East team tonight. So a really major win for Iowa here. They stay right in the mix and in the hunt for that second seed in the Big Ten tournament. People can down the Big Ten this year. I understand. Greer and I, if you watch Ball Up Top, we had a pretty spirited debate about how good the Big Ten really is. I mean, let's look at the standings here, man. UCLA to me is a title contender. Iowa feels like they are Sweet 16, Elite 8 ceiling. I think Michigan is Sweet 16, Elite 8, or Sweet 16 floor, Elite 8 ceiling, I should say. I think to be fair to both, I expect these two teams to be in the Sweet 16. Minnesota, Sweet 16 ceiling. Ohio State, Maryland, Sweet 16 ceiling. Michigan State, I feel like maybe it's a harder pull to get them there. And then you have any of the following 4 teams, USC, Illinois, Washington, and Oregon, who all to me have a reasonable first 4-ish kind of case. It wouldn't shock me if maybe the committee takes 2 and then the other 2 end up as top WBIT seeds. But, this is a 10-team gauntlet here, guys. This is a really good conference this year. And, I know that we pay huge chunk of attention to the SEC for that reason. But, I've come away extremely impressed with what the Big Ten has been able to do really in the wake of Caitlin Clark, right? Like Caitlin comes into this league and it becomes a discussion about, well, the Big Ten has not been good for decades at this point, or they haven't had the stars. They haven't had the singular teams that we deem as title contenders. And what has happened in the last handful of years, and I think you can attribute this not just to her, but I think you can attribute it to Iowa as well, as just a historically relevant program with a great fan base that was, it predates Title IX and it's got 6-on-6 history. And then you've got Christine Grant, a very foundational women's athletic director at the University of Iowa. She brings in C. Vivian Stringer, and, Stringer helps build Iowa into what it's now become. Then you get Lisa Bluter. That leads to Meg Gustafson. That leads to Caitlin Clark. That leads to Jan Jensen. And now Iowa is, a standard bearer in that respect, but it showed the rest of the Big Ten what is possible if you decide to invest in your programs in this way. And when you decide to invest in your programs like this, you end up finding success on the other end. And the SEC came to this party a lot earlier than most, I think. But in the NIL era, with a lot of these Big Ten teams now much more flush with cash in a way that they probably weren't a handful of years ago, you're starting to see this depth emerge in the Big Ten in a way that I frankly don't think it wasn't there in the same way in 2021, 2022. The defense is harder. The guards are more athletic than they were. Are they still, are they at that level of the SEC yet? I don't know, just because I think I'm still having to beat my own perception of the SEC being synonymous with a defensive league. But as we're about to get to, that's starting to change a little bit. But I just, I came away extraordinarily impressed. So I love this, man. I love the fact that on a Thursday night, we are getting unbelievable basketball that is compelling, that is exciting, that, that gets 75 people in here, ready to talk ball on a Thursday. So amazing stuff from the Hawkeyes, obviously a team to watch as we go deeper into the tournament. So let's transition over to a little bit of SEC ball. Before I do that, I'll run everyone through some of the other big scores of the night. And I like to do the Division I instead of top 25, just because, we're all ball knowers here. I like to, show something a little interesting for everyone if we can. There we go. I'll open that up in full so people can see it better. As always, too, if you want to leave a comment, get a super chat, turn the conversation, one way or the other. You have the power to do that. So just wrap it there if you want. God, Texas is just crushing Georgia. My goodness, 51-23 in the third. That was 49-18 at halftime. So I didn't really think there was much reason to jump on later and talk about it. Oh man, Adia Barnes makes it too easy for me sometimes. Like, you really got on Twitter retweeting Carolyn Peck. So, all right, hold on. I guess I got to lay out the groundwork and background for this. Carolyn Peck got on Twitter this week, the ESPN commentator and former Vanderbilt head coach who won a national championship in '99, and went out on a limb, effectively supporting Kim Caldwell at Tennessee. She went out. This is Drea Carter from ESPN. I'm sure y'all saw her comments about, what the Tennessee system is and how it doesn't conform and Tennessee doesn't look good, and really just hammering Caldwell, who did respond to it tonight, actually, in the post, and we'll find that quote for you. But basically said it requires patience. It's hard to be a head coach these days. And of all the people that retweeted, Adia Barnes did, because Adia Barnes just can't help herself, and now she's losing to Stanford by 24. So, yeah. Shout out to our man Poppy Clipboard. Sean Poppy and Clemson up 8 on Cal at the time of this recording. That's in the third quarter. UC Davis and Hawaii going to play in a late game in Honolulu. Okay, here we go. UConn beats Georgetown 84-52. AZ Fudd with 24-4. She obviously listened to Greer on Ball Up Top this week. South Carolina, 112. Missouri, 71. Kelly Harper, man, just can't escape the wrath of Dawn Staley. Medina Akot with 26 and 17. But we will get to that game in just a second. Vanderbilt beats Alabama 85-60. Michaela Blakes with 35. We'll get to that one in a moment. LSU over Tennessee, 89-73. Arkansas still, mind you guys, look at this. The bottom has fallen out in Fayetteville. My goodness. After Mike Neighbors nearly just disappeared Arkansas off the face of the earth as a program, it's been tough sledding for Kelsey Music Boy. 0-15 in SEC play. Louisville gets a win. Duke gets wins. A lot of the top 25 gets wins, except for Ole Miss. Lynn McGill, 28-6-8. Very underrated player for Florida this year. Does this save Kelly Ray Finley's job? I doubt it, but nice story nonetheless. My Chattanooga Mocs fell, but are still in a solid lead in the SoCon. Let's see. Howard is probably going to win the MEAC. Quinnipiac still winning in the MAAC, excuse me. Looks like it's going to be Vermont and Maine once again, trying to win the title there. Miana Castro with 36 points as Western Illinois wins again in the OVC. And, of course, Murray State wins on that end. Notre Dame, Hannah Hidalgo. I know that there are some discussions here about what we do with Hannah Hidalgo as a first-team All-American player. 27 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. That one certainly worth watching as we get into the ACC tournament. Fairleigh Dickinson undefeated in NEC play. I know they're probably going to be a 16 seed, but we got to love watching that. Stephen F. Austin with the win in the Southland. And then I think there was one other game that I wanted to track as well, and it was this one, McNeese State. Unbelievable year for Ayla Gazzardo. If you have a team that's going to be out a coach, she's going to be one to follow. As I scroll, that's pretty much it. Tyler's doppelganger, Sam Purcell, loses to Texas A&M. Joni Taylor, maybe saving job. I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't. So, with that said, let's go to Ole Miss. I wanted to have Coach Yo tell me to shut my mouth on Twitter, but this is what I mean. This is what Shawnee and I were talking about. You can't be the person. You can't be the coach that's terminally online and then appear to have your team be tired and or distracted. You know, this is crunch time of the year. This is where the kids are getting tired. This is where the kids' minds are starting to wander. And as a coach, it is your job to lock them in. And I just don't love what I see from Ole Miss from time to time here, man. I mean, you have a team that every year feels like it's right on the edge of making that breakthrough to get into Van's territory, Dan Chancellor, mind you. And then you just, you do stupid crap like this. You fall apart. And, excuse me, I don't necessarily think that, it means Yo's on a hot seat or any nonsense like that. I mean, it's Coach Yo, man. She's the second best coach in an Ole Miss history. Like, it's not going to be a big deal. But, who do you have behind Cody McMahon here? You can't lay this all at the feet of Sirachinu. Like Sirachinu being out shouldn't be the thing that takes you from being a top 7 program in the SEC this year to being one that's getting hemmed up by a Florida team that looks dead in the water and one where the coach has already been in hot seat articles all week long. This is the little stuff that keeps me from trusting you as a coach and a force and a program to be reckoned with, because whatever you want to say about Vic Schaefer and how whiny or whatever he appears to be, Vic is right. He was right at Vanderbilt saying his teams regularly get better when they get this late in the season. And what are they doing right now against Georgia? They're pasting their ass, man. And, they've looked better since that Vanderbilt game happened. So, while Kim Caldwell may not know how to wrangle her team after a bad press conference in which you throw them under the bus, like Vic certainly has. And if you're Coach Yo and you are somebody that, really kind of plays to the crowd, and the audience on X, where a lot of women's basketball fans are, like, you can't come off as looking more interested in your self-promotion than your wins, because then you're entering territory of the football coach that, you went back and forth with on the Bird app just last week. You start to look like Lane Kiffin a little bit. And I know that probably reads as an insult, but like, whatever you think about Lane, he's a really good coach. That's why he's at LSU. So, I'm not ready to write Ole Miss's obituary yet. It's just one of those things for me where it's like, that's why. That's why when the South Carolina stuff happens, and you look a little too key with the team that you're playing that day. These types of games are why we side-eye those situations a little bit more. Because if you were 23-5, we could maybe forgive that a little more as being like that's not indicative of a distraction or a distracted coach that is more interested in kind of like the promo of the program than anything else. Because you just got caught by a team that clearly you thought you were going to beat. And this would have been a beatdown if not for Tiana Thompson. Like, Tiana Thompson comes off the bench and gives you, 7 of 11 from 3? Oh, yeah, 7 of 11 from 3, man. I'm good. 25 points on 8 of 15 shooting. Like, this is a player, mind you, that averages 5 points a game. So if she doesn't do it, who does, right? So, that to me is Ole Miss's Achilles heel, man. They're built for certain games and they're not built for others. But the one game I want them to be in the spotlight for against South Carolina, they wilt there too. So it's like, what do we do? What do we do with this program? Where do we put them? Because I know Coach Yo doesn't want to just be considered another good coach in the SEC. She carries herself and very clearly wants to be and is passionate to be great. And as I've said multiple times on this show, I want her to be great. I want Ole Miss to be great. But these are the things that stop me from fully buying in. And not that my opinion matters, but it's just the way I kind of see it from the perspective of a guy who follows the sport a lot, So Ole Miss falls to Florida. In the SEC standings now, they're down to 8-7 in SEC play. They are really right in the middle ground of a lot of this right now. They are tied with Tennessee and Kentucky. And Tennessee has had a season from hell. Kentucky had about 3 or 4 games where Tiana Key was injured. So I'm giving them a little bit of a handicap. They should probably be a little bit higher up. So you're right in the mix with Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. Is that really where you want to be? If you're Ole Miss and you carry yourself that way as a program? I don't know. I think you want to be a little better than that. So just my 2 cents. Couple of other SEC matchups to hit before we go. All right, let's have the Michaela Blakes conversation, y'all, because I got some stats, and if you're a fan of Caitlin Clark, you might not like it because we're not going to comp those two individually, but the numbers are getting a little close to one another. So while I discuss this, I want to look up the shout out to Stat Reference for just being incredible in every single way because it just makes my life substantially easier. And open up the stat splits because the stat splits here tell quite the story. We'll go to her 2023-2024 year. I'm talking about Caitlin Clark here. So let me pull the screen and share the Iowa Legends statistics. So these are all game logs. We'll go to the splits, 2023-2024. This is Caitlin's senior season, finished with over 1,200 points. In Big Ten play over the course of 21 games, she had 685 points, which is just friggin' stupid. And then you look at these additional splits here. 237, 195, 275, 226, 209, 92 in April. So let's take Caitlin's best month of her senior year. So this is January, 275 points over 8 games. All right. So we're going to run the calculator. Beep bop, doody doo, 275 divided by 8, 34.375. Okay. So if we decide to take it down one more number here, I mean, even if you take off the averages, just knock off 2 games, right? Or you could even knock off one to get her down to 240. You'd get to where Blakes will be by this recording, because by the end of this weekend, she's only going to get 7 because they are playing Tennessee on Sunday, March 1st. So Blakes is only going to get 7 games. So if we take out 34 points off of Caitlin's January record here and just the average, right? We'll just call it the average of 34 points that she had. She's sitting around 241 points. At 197 here, they haven't factored in Michaela Blakes' most recent February game, which was tonight, in which she had another 35. So I'm not a great mathematician. 197 plus 35 is 232. So if you take again, right off Caitlin's 34, you've got 241 to 232. It's a difference between 9 points between Caitlin Clark's best month as a player her senior year and the month that Michaela Blakes is having now. And if you want to extrapolate these numbers out further, I got them. I put it in our Discord earlier tonight. And if you want to join the Discord, be a ball knower, sign up, subscribe, because you'll get little tchotchke statistics like this from me throughout the game while I'm bored in a hotel room eating Chick-fil-A. I had to look over and see what I'm having. So through February, Michaela Blakes is averaging 33.1 points per game. Through SEC play, she is officially over the 30-point threshold. So we talked on Ball Up Top that Michaela Blakes is averaging 29.9 points per game through SEC play to this point. She is now at 30.2. This has never happened. Not since the inception of the NCAA as we know it in women's basketball. So as I said on Wednesday, the AIAW had first governance of the sport from 1972 when Title IX was passed all the way to 1982. 1982, the NCAA takes over. They run the sport to the present day. Since 1982, this has never happened in the SEC. No player has ever averaged more than 30 points in SEC play. And here's one that's even more wild for you. I'm going to go pull up Vanderbilt's Twitter account. Shout out to the great Chris Kasky, who is the sports information director for Vandy, who has been ready and willing for months. I mean, he has had stuff in the chamber prepared for this moment because he has wanted to push her as a player of the year, and boy, howdy, he has known it. I mean, this to me is a number that I don't think you can beat this. This simply has never happened. I mean, let me pull it. Yeah, okay. It speaks for itself, man. It speaks for itself. Consecutive 30-point games versus top 25 teams. Michaela Blakes with 5. Caitlin Clark. I mean, this is like a show of how transcending Caitlin Clark is that she did this in 2 different seasons, but she did it 4 times over the course of 2 seasons. I mean, yes, Sarah Strong, 60, 40, 90. I get it. Probably the better player in the WNBA. I get it. You can't argue these statistics, man. You can't. You have to reward individual achievement. And I don't know how you can have many more situations and many more games in which you achieve like this. And sure, you can say, oh, they played Kentucky twice. Oh, is Alabama really a top 25 team? Oklahoma's a civ defense. I don't care. This is hard to do. It's hard to do. And for you to do this as regularly as you can, while, mind you, being a little something of an Iron Woman here, because she's regularly playing over 35 minutes a game. I mean, there's a couple matchups here, and you can say, oh, it's stat padding, et cetera, et cetera. You can make that argument to somebody else entirely. You need to have her, on the floor 40 minutes a game. You do, and she earns it. And for the people that are doing the free throw merchant allegations, I'm about to really blow your mind. Are you ready for this? So we are back on stat reference here. Okay, we are back in Caitlin Clark's stats. So I'm not misrepresenting nothing. Caitlin Clark, 23-24 splits. Okay. Let's go to look at any of these months, frankly. Look at the free throw attempts. 60, 24, 62, 46, 54, 18. That's over 3 games. Okay, now we're going to go over to Michaela Blakes. We're going to go look at the monthly free throw attempts because this should put to bed the free throw merchant allegations. 52, 28, 63, 65. The numbers are not that far off, if off at all, from Caitlin Clark. Caitlin had gone to the line over 60 times in 2 different months. So far, through 4 months, Blakes has gone to the line over 60 times twice. And Caitlin had over 50 once. She's over 50 once. Like, it just, it's one of these things where the only real major difference is fairly obvious. It's 3-point attempts. Blakes just doesn't shoot many, and obviously she's not the 3-point shooter Caitlin was or is. It's a little bit different of a scenario when in January you're shooting 118 3-pointers, and in January for Blake she's shooting 64. I mean, if you want to even take the best statistical, if you want to take the best statistics out of this, take this area, right? Take November, where it's 237, where the points are somewhat similar, where the shot attempts are in the same ballpark. Caitlin shot 3 times as many 3-pointers as Michaela Blakes has on similar free throw attempts. And Blakes is still in the same ballpark from a scoring point per game average. I need people to really understand how ridiculous that is. And I know Spencer, who's one of our ball knowers in our Discord, he put it in the chat here about Juju Watkins being in similar ground. Yes, Juju was in similar ground. Think about how we talk about Juju Watkins after year 1. Think about how we talk about her now. When Juju was a freshman, we were having conversations, legitimate, honest conversations were being had, not by me, but they were being had about this kid could go to the WNBA now. She couldn't, but there were conversations about that. Blakes is here, albeit a year later as a sophomore, but she's here. She's in that realm. And to look at what has happened at Vanderbilt has been really, really sensational. They haven't gotten the institutional buy-in of the greater, broader Vanderbilt community. They're not putting 15,000 in Memorial Gym. But if you look at the pictures tonight of that student section, the kids have bought in. That, to me, is what's important. Because where we're at in women's basketball right now, we're still in the building generational fans phase here. I remember when Major League Soccer was coming up, I was in high school, around early 2010s. We're getting into what was considered MLS 2.0. Right, which was like the stadiums out in the suburbs, and it was purpose-built stadiums for the first time ever. They got out of the NFL stadiums, and finally, even if you had to drive 30 miles outside of Denver to Commerce City, like you were in a soccer park, and it felt like that mattered. And around that time, a big discussion was starting to happen about really like the first generation of true MLS fans having kids, because the 15 like the 15, 20 years, like if you were a 20-year-old, for instance, and you were in Major League Soccer, you were a fan of that at the time in 96, you were in your 40s by the time the early 2010s came around. You were at the age where you would have a child, or at least had an older kid, right? And so the thought process, when I was working for an NASL team at the time, the New York Cosmos, and there was a broader discussion happening in the soccer world that the turn of making MLS maybe not, as big as the NFL or as big as the NBA, it was coming in the sense that there was a generation of kids that were growing up as fans because of that, because a parent found the league and then brought their kid, and now their kid is a dyed-in-the-wool Major League Soccer fan, right? And to me, college carries a similar significance for your programs because you are building that same type of lifelong connectivity, but in a very different way. I was a student at the University of Colorado working for their student newspaper when we had game day my sophomore year against Arizona men's basketball. Digger Phelps, the legendary head coach, was still there. And, this kind of Medill Mafia, smarmy, nerdy, Northwestern grad journalist. It was probably a national guy, but I don't remember. But court stormings were still a big topic of discussion at the time. And he sits there and they're doing a presser before game day, and it's Digger, it's Reese Davis, and it's Jay Williams. And the guy's like, Digger, what do you think about court stormings? How horrible are they? Do you really like it? And the first thing Digger Phelps did, and this is just like my favorite thing someone's ever done to someone just to shut him up. He goes, "What school did you go to?" And the guy goes, "I went to Northwestern." And Digger goes, "Well, yeah, I can see why you don't like court storms. You don't know anything about what that feels like." I was just like, as a kid, I was like, "Oh, got him." But what Digger ended up saying was, when you storm a court and you are a college-age kid, what ends up happening is you make a memory that becomes permanent to you. And it creates and molds your association with that school in the long term. And so when you start to feel that way 20 years from now, you're a rich donor, you might remember that, and now you're going to give back, right? You're going to make that team better, or you're going to get season tickets because you remember how fun it was, your sophomore year of college. And what I think people need to understand about the significance about what Michaela Blakes is doing for Vanderbilt University right now is kind of similar to what Juju's done at USC, what Asia Wilson did at South Carolina, what Caitlin Clark did at Iowa. Shoot, even what Angel Reese, kind of started getting going at LSU. And granted, Kim Mulkey's there, so Kim is kind of like a brand under herself. But what Michaela Blakes is creating is memories for people. She's creating ideal moments so guys, girls, whoever wants to go to these games shows up, sees her do, hit 30 plus with this layup package that, rivals to me any men's basketball player. Like, yeah, the bounce and the dunks, those might not be there. Put that girl's layup package against any men's basketball player. She can absolutely end up in that ballpark. And if you're arguing layup packages as a thing for male superiority, then just go outside and take a lap because you're a giant dweeb. She's making these kids feel the significance of this. She's making these kids feel that women's basketball is cool. She's making women's basketball at Vanderbilt cool. And when you see a full student section, it begets adults to get tickets because the kids are going back to their parents and saying, this is sick. Your 60-year-old dad is at home and he sees, a thing ping on his Twitter because he's got his phone set to Vanderbilt alerts, Google alerts. And his kid is like, I was there. It's awesome. Now dad is at home and he's watching Vanderbilt too. Right. So to me, when we talk about player of the year significance, and that's why I did all the preamble to bring us there, right? When I think about player of the year significance, I think about moments like that. I think about significance because the game is still in a place where I think player of the year carries a cultural resonance to it too. And I personally feel that over the last 10 years, media has voted accordingly on stuff like that, where I think if you are a motion maker and you're really good, then that's what you do. That is what you build. That's what you create. So I didn't go to the game tonight in Vandy. I got a test that I got to study for at the conclusion of my training, but also I feel like Shea Ralph would have been tired of me for the fourth game in a row going in the presser being like, Coach, what are we saying now? Can you give me another viral quote so I can put it on, on Instagram and TikTok for you? It's just, you're running out of superlatives, man. We're in territory that we've literally never been in the SEC. And to me, that matters. I think it does. And rebuilding a program like this and effectively resurrecting it from the dead, it matters. It's important. Let's wrap up with a little bit of LSU and Tennessee talk, because under no circumstance do you have to hand it to Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey is just funny, man. I hate that Kim Mulkey. The worst person is funny as shit. And they might not know it sometimes. Other times they do. But Kim Mulkey has no business wearing this outfit and doing the Key and Peele handshake sketch. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Hello, how are you? Started from the bottom, now we're here. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Good evening, nice to meet you. Good evening, nice to meet you. Good evening, nice to meet you. Like, come on, bro. It's so ridiculous for this. In this getup, like this Tiger King ass getup right here, dog. Like with these shoulder pads. Like, what is this is crazy. Oh my god, I can't stand it. And you know what? I've had plenty of people tell me this before. Like, I have had other coaches tell me this. I've had ex-coaches tell me this. I've had players tell me this, being like, look, there's a lot of opinions. I have had people straight up tell me there are a lot of opinions you can have on Kim Mulkey, but the minute you get in a room with her, she is going to charm you. And I remember when I was doing the Legendarium piece on Louisiana Tech, it was our two-parter called Rain and Rust, and you can find it on No Cap Space WBB.com. I had about a 45-minute phone interview with Kim, and I got off the phone and I put it in the group chat, and I was like, There's things that Kim has done kind of off the court where I just, from a personal standpoint, I don't feel like I could platform or feel good about doing that, but goddamn, I get it. I absolutely get how somebody like Angel Reese or somebody else could kind of hand wave some of the other stuff. I get it. Not, it wouldn't be me, but I understand, because she's good at it, man. She's good at it. She's funny, and she just, she knows how to do it. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, you had Drea Carter, as I mentioned, who kind of took a hacksaw to Kim Caldwell, and Kim Caldwell was asked about it in post, and so let's listen to the conversation here. Oh, not Gandalf the Orange.
I haven't made a comment yet. I think that it's fair for the most critical people of this program to be the people who have built this program, and it's hard for me to get upset with a lot of critique when I'm my biggest critic, and I know that things aren't going the way that they need to be going, and I don't not leaving work every day happy and satisfied and patting myself on the back. No one in our program is. We have a program full of love. We have a program full of honesty, and we know that, and I think that that's why they've been able to be so resilient through this. I haven't made a comment yet.
I like it. I don't really see much problem with it. It's the right thing to say. Of course, Drea Carter has every reason to be able to critique it. Do I agree with her critique? No, absolutely not. I think it was a very player-centric critique and lacked a little bit of nuance, but I also don't blame Drea for that. You're on a pregame, postgame show where the way those rundowns are produced, it's so tight that you really can't get 5 minutes. You can't do the nuance in 5 minutes. It's not a podcast, there's a lot going on. The way they're punching it in the truck is like they're trying to get you to go fast. They're trying to keep a viewer engaged. And so, the fire and brimstone can happen, but it required more. And I think if you were to put Drea on a podcast, I think she would get it. But I like that from Kim Caldwell, man. I really, really do. We got a super chat from Dakota. Thank you, as always, saying Big Mulk wearing sequins and feathers, guaranteed W. I'm going to take a quick segue away from this because I'm going to talk about Caldwell more in a sec, but I also, why did Kim Mulkey do Holly Rowe like this? Like, this is so funny.
Anybody that's a basketball junkie is looking at this like a rec ball. That's what it looks like out here. You take it. That's a hot potato. No, you take it. Defense, help side, non-existent. It's one-on-one basketball by both teams right now. But Tennessee makes you play that way. It's just kind of kamikaze. Take care of the ball. Take care of the ball. Keep them out of the paint. Rebound the ball, and you might win tonight.
Okay, I am really trying to take you seriously, but these feathers are really distracting, Coach.
This is not good basketball. Anybody that's
like, y'all know the Chris Paul meme? Like when Chris Paul is doing like the thing with Steve Kerr where he's like, that, if you could hear and put audio to the Chris Paul meme, it would be that Kim Mulkey laugh. Just, like, who allows this, bro? Like, who lets her do this? Like, man, it drives me crazy, but it's just, she's got so much Sonia Hogg in her, man. Like, it really, Sonia is the original coach of Louisiana Tech who recruited Kim. And the story about Sonia Hogg at Louisiana Tech is she used to drive a white Cadillac and had these kind of big gaudy outfits. She'd go into any gym in Louisiana, whether it was Kim Mulkey telling me this story or Janice Lawrence or Pam Kelly. Sonia would walk in, into every gym and she'd glad hand everybody. And she's wearing this like audacious white suit in the middle of the 70s in Louisiana where, you were expected to be kind of prim and proper, and she just charmed your pants off. And like, even interviewing Sonia now, she's in her 80s. And I was like, please, like, I will talk to you for like 3 hours. This is great. Kim doesn't dress like her. I actually have asked Louisiana Tech people if Kim took her inspiration from Sonia. They were like, no, Sonia was way more like subdued than Kim. But the personality type, that total gregariousness, it still exists there. So appreciate that, Dakota. And we always get something from Mulkey. But Caldwell here, man, I like it. I like this quote. I think, and I've said it all week, I think if Caldwell didn't have the quitters quote, we look at this season with her a whole lot differently. I think the one verboten thing you can do, especially in women's basketball, is throw your players under the bus. And I think to a point, maybe Caldwell didn't realize how precarious her own position was with her own fan base. And you know, there's an entirely possible world in which that is the case, right? I mean, she's not really on, you know, she's not on the line like, yo, like she doesn't know this stuff. So maybe the expectation was that was an attempt at old school coaching that just really doesn't exist anymore. Could just be a moment of frustration, right? I mean, people are human. And I think Dawn Staley was right being like, yeah, I wouldn't have said that. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have either. That's okay. But the fact that there's accountability coming on Caldwell's side here tells me that she's learning. And that's really all I've ever said is like the great ones, or the good ones learn, the great ones learn and implement and achieve. And I really think that that's something that Tennessee's going to take a long, hard look at this at the end of the year. And the question is going to have to be, are you the type of coach that when we tell you it's got to change, you lay out a plan for how you're going to do it and do it in a way where everyone's going to win, you know? Because changing your system or changing how you play or what you do or how you operate your program, that also does require institutional buy-in. And I don't think people realize that very much. Like, this isn't just the snap of a finger and you say, oh, you know, it's now all of a sudden we're not running this anymore. That tells me you are not actually confident in your coaching abilities. I would be more nervous if they rolled out next year with a totally different system, because then that would tell me that she doesn't really have it like that. The best coaches still maintain the courage of their conviction in terms of their system, but they tweak it, you know? That's why Dawn Staley is doing what they're doing. We'll wrap the show with that in a sec. Like, it makes a massive difference. And I really do think that she's going to figure it out, man. She's like, I'm 31 years old. She's like 4 years older than me. Do you think I could coach the University of Tennessee now or in 3-4 years? No. You know, and you could say, well, then Tennessee shouldn't have hired her. Yeah, okay, maybe. But I didn't see anybody else that was really better. I think you really had to get away from Pat Disciples, even Carol Lawson. I think you had to peel away. And look, if the bottom falls out, then the bottom falls out. You know, I mean, you're already starting to see the rebuttal pieces coming out, like that piece in The Athletic this week about how Tennessee is just not that kind of program anymore. To me, that's an assertion I just fundamentally reject. I completely reject the idea that Tennessee is not that kind of program anymore. It is not subject to NIL. It's not subject to geography in the same way football might be. You can still win a lot of games there, bro. Like, you can't recruit on Pat's name anymore. You know, you have to recruit on something different. I think that's what Kim Caldwell is doing at Tennessee. I think she is recruiting off something new, but you know, the idea that you can't be a great program there is absolutely bloody preposterous. I reject that notion wholeheartedly. You know, Louisiana Tech, Old Dominion, yeah, like you might not be what you were in the 80s. Tennessee, there's no excuse. You absolutely can do that. Knoxville winners are not that bad, bro. They really, if you can do winners in stores, you can do winners in Knoxville. You can do winners in Sioux City, you know, or Iowa City, you can do winners in Knoxville. It's, you know, it's the Appalachians. It's not the freaking Himalayas. Like, come on, you know, it's like ridiculous. So let's wrap up the show. Talking about a little bit of South Carolina. You know, I know that I didn't really touch on the ACC very much tonight. Wasn't a lot of intrigue outside of my dog Poppy clipboard. But I think, you know, South Carolina just deserves some praise and shout outs for being just a wagon. I mean, just a freaking wagon this year. Look at where we're at, folks. I mean, Dawn Staley doing Dawn Staley things. This is what? 29-point win, 30-point win, 25-point win, 33-point win, 43-point win, 7-point win at LSU on the road. So that's effectively a rivalry game. 19-point win over a top 25 opponent. Host Ole Miss. We know what they did. That's a, 27? I'm doing napkin math here. 27-point win. And this is a 39-point win. And you got Kentucky on the road in Lexington on March 1st, which quietly could be interesting. Could be a bit of a closer game, but I mean, guys, Chloe Kitts is coming back next year. like the death machine is always going death machine, you know? And I know I got some flack from people being like, you didn't expect heck of a trip to have in the middle of a live broadcast. Okay, there we go. You pay for the upgraded Bonvoy Wi-Fi, and what do you get? Should have picked a Hilton. Unbelievable. The IHC group would never do this to me. Dawn Staley, man, like I said on Wednesday, like a coach of the year candidate, legitimately, just because I feel that this was a year that we didn't anticipate. I mean, even last year too, though. I didn't anticipate them in the title game last year. And then here they are. You know, they are getting to a point where they are kind of, they figured out not how to cruise into February, but they figured out how to tweak and tinker and experiment for the first 2/3 of the year, you know? And if there is a team that gets better in February and March every year, it's them. They just do it better. They're just a better team in every way. Medina Okut, I mean, you know, the splits are crazy. And Tanaya Latson, you know, it's interesting here. With Tanaya Latson, I feel like, you know, we've had hot and cold games from her, and people are going to turn this into a Dawn messes with your stuff as a guard. But if you look at some of Latson's numbers, like, yeah, it's not the same, but like, she's still 50% from the field. 3-point percentage has gone down some, but she was never an elite 3-point shooter. She was about a 37% shooter last year. And then she's 79% from the line. Joyce Edwards is great. Okut is incredible. I mean, man, you know, and as KGB says here with the super chat, Kitts, Watkins, get Okut eligibility. Leave some for somebody else, man. I want to see Big French up here. I want to see, oh man, what? Air France. That's what Shawnee called Tornabees. Air France. I want to see Air France get cooking. Because, first of all, fire nickname. Thank you for the super chat. Fire nickname for somebody that can dunk in women's basketball. We start calling her Air France, that's going to catch, like in a big, big way. You could apply that to Don Malonga too, but Team USA has got to be careful in the 2028 Olympics, bro. They're like the French are coming for our stuff in basketball. We gotta be careful about that. But man, it's just, you know, this is just Dawn Staley, man. This is what she does. You know, torture Kelly Harper, torture coaches named Kim, torture Vic Schaefer. She just does it to everybody. She does it to everybody in this league, in this conference, every single year. And, you know, I know that South Carolina fans have been in here before telling me, you know, it's wrong for you to doubt, right? And I think that's reasonable. I think it's a valid critique of me and what I say in my content, right? Like, I think that's a valid critique of me. But a big reason that I hold that skepticism is I hold the same skepticism of UConn. As of now, I hold the same skepticism of UCLA, even though from a storyteller perspective, I find theirs a little bit more compelling because they have not been to the mountaintop yet. And I like seeing teams that are knocking on the door in that way. I just think it makes for a richer story sometimes than it does teams that are on repeats or doing like 2 and 3 years or 3 and 4 years. And some people like the dynasty stuff better, and that's okay. Like, it's a preference thing. I like dynasties for a period and then 1 or 2 teams every few years knocking them off. Like Indiana this year in football was a great story that comes out, right? They run the field. They're 15-0. They win the stuff. And if that means Indiana's the big bad from now on, like, cool, fine. And if Indiana's going to be the big bad from now on in college football, then I will root for the next underdog. I like an underdog, and I also like a powerhouse that hasn't broken through. Some of that's self-projection because I was born into an Oregon family. So, you know, I am like the tortured Oregon football fan. So maybe I see my team in every underdog that finally gets over the hump and does it, because I've literally never seen it happen in any of the big 3 sports. 4 sports, 5 sports, 6 sports. Jesus Christ. I hate being an Oregon fan sometimes. But when you are a standard bearer program, like it's not, you don't draw my ire, but like you draw my skepticism, because on some level it's like, it's fun that you are the big bad, and I love watching you as the big bad, but I like seeing if there's any chance to beat you, because to me, sports is about risk and variance. And I was listening to Bomani Jones and Howard Bryant the other day, and Bomani was kind of criticizing his old colleague Dan Le Batard for basically, taking a turn into the analytics of it all in sports, right? And saying, you want to get rid of outdoor play in the NFL because you wanted the two best possible products on the field. And, we don't watch sports for that. We watch sports not to see the best team win, because occasionally in sports, the best team doesn't win. Sometimes there is an, force majeure, an act of God. Sometimes there's a Camila Cardoso buzzer beater 3. Sometimes there is, a Nika Mule blocking, a blocking foul, right? Just sometimes that stuff happens, Sometimes the better team might not win, and that's okay. And I always want sports to be interesting. And that's why I love the fact that South Carolina has such an engaged and interested fan base and wants to dunk on poor hapless nerds like myself who, dare to say, hey, maybe it might be fun if they lost one or two. Because if you take the variance out of it, we end up with the Kevin Durant Warriors, where it's like, all right, I guess I'll just watch something else. It takes our interest out. So it's fun to have the interest. And it also, by extension, makes South Carolina more fun. It makes UConn more fun because, while there is a byproduct, and admittedly, I fall into this trap sometimes when it comes to specific players over teams, there can be fatigue with that level of greatness. I don't think you can lose sight of the greatness of the players. I do think you can be fatigued sometimes by the greatness of the teams, but we have to kind of recalibrate that as often as we can, and I think part of me on this show is like self-projection again of, reminding myself that like, yeah, man, they might have just beaten the brakes off of Missouri by 39 points, but there's something neat in that. There's something interesting and compelling in that they are just dominant. And by the time we get to April, when dominant meets dominant meets dominant, it's going to give us some all-time awesome basketball. And I know, the early part of this year started a little slow. I know that there's some kind of discussions or concerns about, what the first two rounds have looked like in prior years, where it seems very chalky until we get to the Sweet 16. I know last year's tournament felt really chalky. I feel like I genuinely believe we're in for something special this year. So that's going to be a lot of fun. This has been a lot of fun, and it will always be a lot of fun. It's 11 o'clock Central here in Nashville, and that is all for me. For those of you that like to listen to this in podcast form, it'll be in your podcast feeds tomorrow morning. Stay tuned on No Cap Space as well. Our first edition of Celeb Shot comes out tomorrow. That is our new monthly freelancer series. Yes, we are out of position. Financially, we can finally pay some amazing writers to bring some amazing work to No Cap Space. And so get pumped for that. You're going to see a lot of new names, some big names, some people that are writing about women's basketball in really cool ways. And it's going to be a lot of features and the things that you love. So stay tuned for that. We got our first one that's going out tomorrow. The Newswire will be back on Saturday, as it always is. But for now, I'm Andrew Hobner. This has been No Cap Space. We are No Cap Space WBB.com. You can find our free daily newsletter. You can subscribe to it, be a ball knower, join the Discord, do all the things, and we'll see y'all very, very soon.